Hello Year 13 and welcome to this A-Level Feedback for Water Inquiry Question 2. I just thought I would do it in this version so you get some more immediate feedback. You can have a look at it and then you can ask me questions on the next lesson once you've been through your work and you've done some analysis and you've done some own personal feedback to look at how you've done. As always, these are the key points for peer self-assessment. Read through them and make sure that you are understanding the feedback that I've put. If not, make a note of it and then you can ask me during the next lesson. The key to this is really helping you to make sure that your knowledge and understanding is up there, but also your ability to answer the exam questions as well. So the first question was describe the difference between meteorological, hydrological and famine drought. Most of you got this absolutely spot on. But the key that you really needed to do to get the 4 marks was link them together to show that meteorological drought is often the first stage of any other kind of drought because it's the low precipitation rates or high temperatures. This over time will then lead to the stream flow deficit because there's less water within the drainage basin. And then over time, because of extraction and because of ongoing lack of precipitation, this can lead to the agricultural drought. So to get to the 4 marks, I was really looking at you being able to link these together. The next slide is a really good example of how this is done. You may recognize this as one of your pieces of work, so well done. But you can pause this and just have a look at this, and this would give a good example for 4 marks. Not too long, it's straight and to the point, but lots of key terms in there with a clear explanation. So this answer had mixed responses to it. You certainly, in your knowledge and understanding of what causes droughts, you were all really good on. But the key here was the factors influencing short-term droughts. So this is really looking at the meteorological conditions. So it could be that the low precipitation rates caused by high pressure systems at mid-latitudes, or it could be how ENSO and other oscillations can impact the intertropical convergence zone. You could also possibly talk about the impacts of human factors leading to agricultural droughts, such as the mismanagement of water supplies. Now, many of you did go on to talk about Sahel region in sub-Saharan Africa. The problem with that answer was that the Sahel is seen as more of an arid area and it would have a long-term drought. So you've got to be very careful of the key terms in the terminology that the exam board expect you to know. Deforestation is likely to change climate and it could be a more longer-term effect. It's really important when you do this. I mean, there was some brilliant knowledge and understanding talking about air pollution leading to drought in the Sahel and places like that. But we're really looking at these short-term droughts. And it's really important to remember the examiners may not have done the same amount of studying as you. So it is important to keep focused on the most obvious points and particularly those which appear in the specification. As a geographer, as you know, I hate doing you and keeping you focused on the spec, but we need to do that in terms of this exam. So again, we have a sample answer here, and we can see I've put it into bullet points. So what we have, first bullet point, is a detailed extended explanation. Okay. The next one is ENSO, linking that to the changes in the tropical convergence zone. So this would probably get 5 or 6 marks. Now, on many of your comments, I've mentioned about the difference between depth and range. A lot of you had gone into a great deal of depth, which is this first paragraph, but often at the expense of a range of different ideas. For the explain questions, it only needs to do what it needs to. You don't need to give massive amounts of examples or detailed case study knowledge. It really is making a point, explaining it, but linking it to the question. The reason that I would give this probably 5 marks rather than 6 is I would want to see 3 different ideas that could go on to that. So again, a lot of you had the knowledge and understanding here, but it was getting the key information down and linking it to the ecosystems mentioned in the specification. So again, sub-Saharan Africa came up quite a lot, but it wanted you to really focus on the wetlands and the forests. So here you can see sort of the examples of the kind of information. You should have that on your feedback from your Firefly assessment anyway. But one of the key things that everybody missed out was this idea of the impact of resilience of the whole ecosystem. Is that when you have a drought, if it's a short drought, then often ecosystems are able to bounce back fairly quickly. But the problem is with these more prolonged droughts and more common droughts is this is impacting on the resilience of the ecosystem to bounce back, meaning that we will lose that ecosystem, which will have much longer term effects on it. Again, another student answer. You can compare it to yours, but you can see that this is written in a really simple but effective, concise style. It's linked how the impacts can have an effect on the processes, but then how that will link to the functions. On this one, the first paragraph is maybe a little bit too much on the processes, but on this one, it really does start to go into more of the impacts on it and how it's going to affect that ecosystem much more. This one again was done pretty well, and you've got these main different ideas that you can see here. But again, some of you were nice and concise, got straight to the point and answered it, but some went into far too much depth, far too detailed an explanation for this and didn't get the range of different ideas there. One thing that was common, and I'm a bit worried about copying and pasting from this, is that people said that the problem with dams is they can remove sediment from the river system, leading to more erosion downstream. Now, you just left it there. You didn't mention about how that would affect the flooding or increasing the likelihood of flood events. What would also have been good in this would be to link it to the storm hydrograph and the key terms within that. So if you're talking about the likelihood of flood events, you're talking about things that would increase discharge, reduce lag time, and those kind of factors. Again, a student answer, which I've put into bullet points. Now, the bullet points show we've got three main different areas, which is really good because it's showing a range. And this really shows the amount of depth that you need as well. And that's what you need. It's about selecting that right information and being concise. So this would pretty likely to get all 6 marks in the exam. Most of you did this really well. But key things that people were mentioning, they were talking about high relief or low relief. What is high relief? You might say areas of high altitude, or you might talk about steep slopes or gentle slopes rather than high relief. High relief doesn't really mean anything, so make sure you understand that. Obviously, loads of different things that you could talk about, but we're looking at these different factors that make it more likely to be a flashy river. And a lot of you had obviously gone through your notes and looked at that, so that was good. But again, here, it's really well worth mentioning key things like reducing lag time and increasing peak discharge, because these are the factors which increase the chance of flooding. And another student answer that you can see here, which again covers a range with the 3 different ideas, but also has the depth. Now, you don't necessarily all of your answers need to be at this level of depth, but this would be a really good standard. You could lose things, maybe therefore a drainage basin with little or no vegetation is highly vulnerable to flooding. You might not need that for an explain question, but it is good practice to have if you've got the time. So therefore, this is a really good example. Compare it to your own work and what does it look like compared to yours. This one was much more mixed in that the question is, explain how climate change can lead to an increased risk of both drought and flooding. Now, many of you talked about how global atmospheric circulation can lead to different patterns of drought and flooding in different areas. So talking about flooding more likely in mid-latitude areas, droughts more common at tropical areas. But that's just really explaining the situation that it is. The key to this was really explaining the links between how climate change is going to lead to a warmer atmosphere, which is going to be able to hold more water and lead to greater evaporation. It could also lead to changes within those mid-latitude depressions, leading to more heavier rainfall outbreaks, but also increase the chances of blocking anticyclones, which could lead to drought and flooding. So you can see you've got all of the ideas here, but it was linking it to the risks of both drought and flooding, not necessarily in different areas, but possibly in the same areas, and linking it to climate change, warmer atmosphere, holding more water. Looking at the student answer, there is a range of different ideas. So we're looking at the reasons for drought and why that might happen. We're also looking at the increase in extreme weather events, and I could have put, in addition, another bullet point at this bit, in addition, high temperatures due to climate change causing melting of glaciers. So that would have given a range of 3 different ideas, but each of them well explained there. Now, this one was a frustrating one. What a lot of you had done is copied and pasted, or virtually copied, the information that you can see on the screen. I think at least 3 people copied that word for word. The problem with that is it doesn't answer the question necessarily. It doesn't link it directly there. The key to this was really linking the sea temperatures to high and low pressure systems, which lead to more rain or less rain in areas. Now, this is great information, but it's not really answering the question according to the specification. And you will see if you compare your answers that the first ones I thought, oh, that was okay. And I gave you the benefit of the doubt. And I maybe gave you 3 or 4 marks for that. But as time went on, as I saw this repeated more and more, I realised actually you didn't have an understanding of it. So that's why the marks were reducing down for it. But if we do look at what a better one looks like, this has taken the same information but put it much more into its own words, but it's also included the information of how the process links and leads to it. So at the same time, El Nino triggers dry conditions due to the colder sea temperatures, meaning less evaporation, increasing the likelihood of droughts and dry conditions. That is linking it much more into the answer that we can see there. So overall, there is an improvement exam technique in your written answers. The knowledge and understanding is really good, but it is about answering the question with that knowledge. Absolutely fine if you're going through your notes as you're doing this, but to copy and paste is just not acceptable. There were far too many very similar answers, and I'm not sure whether that's understanding, because you should be adapting that information to develop it and link it to the question, and that would show good application and understanding. And hopefully I've shown you how you need to balance the depth of your explanation with the range of different ideas to show a wide idea of understanding. So don't describe or explain the meaning of terms. Yet these aren't needed. So if you're talking about evapotranspiration, you then don't need brackets to tell me what evapotranspiration is. All right? You've got to think that these examiners, well, maybe not the best geographers, but they do have an understanding of geography. So we'll know what those key terms mean, but make sure you use those key terms in the right way. Hope you found that useful. Thank you very much for watching. Make a note on it. Add improvements to your own notes if there's anything that you've learned from that. But also make a note of anything you may want to ask me in the next lesson if there's anything you're still not sure about. Okay, so thank you very much for watching, ladies and gents, and see you soon. Bye.